So now we check Alex's blood pressure. Then he is in fact still alive.
Alex, you see color? Where are you?
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Alex.
Yes, first of all, give a round of applause to our actors. One of the reasons when we were asked, when someone asked, you know, what if this was just to make fun of these people, the answer was yes. Yeah. But also, one of the things that Lauren and I felt really strongly about was like, you know, people aren't paying attention, really. Because even though this is public and these are all public statements and stuff, you know, this stuff kind of happens in a vacuum, and then unless you have someone like Steve there who's like, everybody look over here. Yes, give a round of applause. So like your local press is so important, because unless they have somebody kind of being like, look over here, then this stuff kind of just goes unchecked, and nothing really changes. And so what my hope is, and our hope is that, you know, if we threaten to do dramatic readings of every town council meeting across the state, people might actually watch what they say at these things.
And it's also like important. This was said out loud.
Yeah.
People said these things out loud, and repeating it and just having normal people read it out loud again just highlights how absurd it is.
Yeah.
And I hope it came across that way.
So now, and again, if any of you, oh, well, I knew they were coming. I didn't know if they'd send the Woonsocket police to Cranston, but I was prepared if they did. When we all talked about doing this, we talked about a talkback. I messaged Alex. We asked him to read himself. He graciously declined but said he would be here, yes. And but I said, will you do the talkback with us? He said, what's a talkback? And I said, well, it's when an audience tells us how much they don't like us. We in theater are very familiar. It's quite like a ton. So I want to welcome Alex up here. Alex, come on up. We always put Justin in the corner anyway, so this was, he's gotten plenty of attention for today. You give him more than that, he gets, okay. So now we want to open it up. Again, if at any point you need to duck out, if you need to use the restrooms, they're back there. We're going to keep it very casual. But I really would love to hear, now, sorry to make you sit through that again, but now that you've heard it again, how does it strike you hearing it out loud and read by different people?
Yeah, so I honestly, like, I heard a lot of it just now in their voices, like, and because I honestly submitted this resolution thinking it was going to pass. Maybe not 7-0, but I thought that this was pretty basic, pretty straightforward. As a community as diverse as Woonsocket, that it would be good for us to do this and really decisively make this statement. And when Councilman Knoyer started with the absurd amendment, I was beyond belief, and my blood pressure spiked as it did today, honestly. And it was really embarrassing for me as a citizen of Woonsocket to hear these things being said. And I actually started. I almost regretted submitting the resolution in the first place, because it meant that all of these things were now on public record, and every person in our community who is at risk because of the growth of these ideologies is hearing their elected officials say these things and say basically that they don't see the problems that the people in our community feel, and that just and this kind of brought it all back. And I think we all in the room felt very felt those things.
How do these people have jobs? Is what I'm wondering. How do they? They're clearly not very shy about saying this stuff. Is it like they've been in these positions forever and they just? So
I think that it's a pretty. So the city of Woonsocket, the people are amazing. We're a diverse community, very vibrant. The people are amazing, and I think there's so much potential for a government that matches that. But right now, through this very complicated, sort of the dynamic interplay between the very conservative talk radio, WNRI is the station, and sort of the dynastic approach to politics that ends up being taken in the city. It's become this sort of powerful core of people that don't really interact with the broader community. They interact with just the regular voters, which is a very small pool of people that tends to be much more conservative and like-minded to the types of things we heard today.
How many people are here from Woonsocket? Oh, look at that. Oh, you drove all this way. God love you. my goodness, welcome. Were all of you aware of what was said before the article came out, or how many people in the room were first exposed through the article? So do you have any thing to ask Alex or to add, or yes? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh yes, go ahead.
So I'm assuming the Woonsocket City Council has in the past passed resolutions
Yes.
that were very limited, like, you know, maybe about Christmas or something like that.
I'm not sure about that, but yeah, resolutions are by their nature non-binding unless they're like instructing the mayor to do something.
So going forward, how are they going to treat these resolutions that clearly have no meaning whatsoever? And how are you going to respond to that?
I address this directly to Councilman Tenoyer, presumably he's watching the live stream right now, that I would hope he makes the same arguments for any non-binding resolution, and that we never do them again, because it seemed like this was a very specifically targeted argument against something that really just should be second nature to all of us, to do business.
What else? Well, we're opening the floor. Anybody? Yes.
I'm just like trying to think how to break the bubble of the people, because there are people, I talk to people with Woonsocket, and friends of people I don't agree with Woonsocket, but all the Canadian course and stuff, they're not conservatives that hang out there. But I talk to people about this, and they're like, oh no, Alex, he got owned in that. They act like they were like all for what James Canora was saying, and like as soon as they try to challenge them, they go back, oh, I won't argue, I'm going to work with them. Like, how do we break the bubble of people who don't want to like see the people they already agree with and see that what they're saying is kind of silly? Like, I don't know how to do that.
Go to theater.
Yeah. Get these in my. Hey, come on in.
So yeah, there are elements of insularity in the way that, you know, sort of like there is the culture around this talk radio and around, you know, sort of like the dynasties that sort of like define our government. It's a very isolated culture, like, and so the people who sort of align themselves within the confines of that tend to be very disconnected from the much broader community that makes up the vast majority of Woonsocket. And so I think actually I would say one of the things that is already being done is that, you know, community events where people from all around the city, from all walks of life are coming together to enjoy each other's presence. That's beginning. So like there's an organization, Downtown Woonsocket Collaborative, that does that, and some others that plan events. And like these, as more and more of these events happen, it brings the community together and sort of attempts to break the bubbles that we keep ourselves in, or that people tend to keep themselves in. But I think more broadly is electoral politics.
Yes.
I'm sorry, you just said something about break the bubble.
Like, get in the bubble.
I think the thing to break the bubble, we need to get him a new dictionary. That's what
I will donate my own dictionary. I want one from 2005, 2007.
Dictionary.
I just wish I was there the day he walked into Barnes & Noble, that bright sunny day in 2001. The Brown Bookstore. He walked, oh my God. Him walking on Thayer Street must be like a vampire walking into Anyway.
So the backstory actually to that is that I went to Brown for grad school, and that was a piece of messaging used against me throughout the entire campaign by the lawyer and a couple of the others in that clique.
Ivy League.
So that was a little throwback.
If I could say also another thing about just like talking to people that never get it. My personal motto is just to like never let the bigots win. Like just never ever let them have the last word. I always say that to myself, and like if I ever see any racism, sexism, white supremacy happening, I will put myself in front of it. And I think that's something we should all do, because it really, they will back away. they don't like what you said. When you start challenging them, they're like, oh well, I don't know, and they
Gotta go to work now.
yeah, they don't want to. They don't want to. So when you show that you have more facts on the subject, when you have more smarts and facts and like knowledge, they don't want to come back at it. So.
I was going to ask what the people reading it. Did you all see the article when it came out, or was it when I asked you to to take a look at it? What were some
Someone
of
you
your...
posted it. That's what,
Yeah. Poor Jomo making you say all that.
I couldn't finish it. Like, I started to read it and I was just like, oh my god, I need to step away.
One of my favorite parts is the end where Brian says, free speech isn't only about me being able to say what I want to say, when I want to say it, as long as it isn't fighting words. So they acknowledge that you can't use fighting words in free speech, but they won't acknowledge that white supremacy is fighting words.
My favorite part was how they don't know what white national is, but someone taught them about virtual signaling.
Yeah.
And they just love talking about virtue signaling, which I'm like, so you know what virtue signaling, I mean, you don't know what virtue signaling is, but you know the term, but just white nationalism escaped you. John, you teach, you're a teacher.
I am a teacher.
I would love to, and an artist. And
Sometimes. Well, as a teacher, well, this will be a little long, so sorry. One of the first articles I received, the first article I received when I started teaching was for a U.S. history class, and it was an excerpt from an article written by David Lowenthal, where he says that heritage is not history. And he makes the point, and he doesn't really go into like where and why heritage is important, and for the record, I think it is an important thing. But he talks about separating out history, which more often than not seeks to illuminate, right? It seeks to include from heritage. When heritage says things like, my country is right or wrong, but you never think it's wrong, right? And so I think it's important that we increasingly try to disabuse people of notions of heritage. That's difficult because all of this and all of what Neuer is saying is actually tied to a sense of identity. People will fight to the death about their identity, okay? And frankly, sometimes, we have to remember, it's not just marginalized groups that are willing to fight to the death, or have to fight to the death, unfortunately, about their identity, right? And so, in reading this, after, or before, or through the script, like, the thing that we actually, what disappoints me more is, there are actually real conversations to be having that are complex and complicated about notions of identity in groups and out groups, and in how we refer to people, how we see people, how we understand how these things work. But this is the lowest hanging fruit in the world. So that's actually what disappoints me more, is like I know there's like real ass conversations to be having about the things that are right in here, but we as society kind of keep on going because we're just like, yeah, but like, so am I a person of color? Huh?
I don't think like that.
Yeah, like it's that. It's well, I don't think like that, or people aren't willing to challenge those notions. And
Yeah,
so,
but look what happened when I'm sorry, Alex, I'm sorry. When he came forward, and I'm sure that had to be a real brave moment for you in front of a bunch of people, because you kind of knew what you were going to get back. But that had to be really earth-shaking for you to stand up in front of a group of people, and when you were the council president, when you read that, boy, you sucked all my air out of me. I had to ask Black Jesus to fix it. When this was handed to me, I was like, ooh. Yeah. Like, this is really out in the open. Like, I couldn't believe, I must have read it like 10 times because I couldn't believe what I was reading. Like, it amazed me that much. So I want to ask, how are you doing?
What is the next? I was joking, but I'm not joking. What is the next meeting going to be like? Because they know that.
I feel like I need to be there.
Yeah.
Yes, you should be there.
I need to see the tea spilled on the table. Who's going to mop it up? Because this is crazy.
What do you think the next? What is it going to be like when you're with all these people again now going forward? Because you still have a job to do.
Yes, and I'm excited to continue doing that job. But I mean, so I think that the next meeting is going to have a lot of people, mostly from the city, coming and telling them how they feel about the things that were said at the meeting 2 weeks ago. Because I've gotten dozens of emails and messages and texts and calls about this, mostly from people in Woonsocket, and a fair number of them from people of color or other marginalized identities in the community who are thankful that this is being discussed now. And that is exactly indicative of the reasoning for doing this in the first place, because we read the news every day. We I think all of us in this room recognize things that the members on the council don't, that this is a problem, this is a growing, it's a growing tide. We tied in part to the 2016 election, but it was growing before that. It's been growing since Reagan, really. And so, and obviously before that, all of the history of the United States. So, no, I mean, like in terms of in terms of its modern form. I mean. So I think that I honestly, my emotional reaction to the situation really doesn't matter to me, because yes, I was targeted by this clique in the same way that I was throughout the entire 4 months prior to the election, and I got used to it. You can attest to that.
Yeah. Oh yes, what were you going to say, Steve?
Well, I guess my question is, Alex said, and saw some odds of agreement about electoral politics, but it seems like, if I've been taking a drug and it's making me very sick, and the doctor says, well, we're going to double your dose because the real problem is you're not taking enough of the drug that's been killing you, that just seems like a very baffling prescription. And if you want to extend the analogy, you could talk about chemotherapy and maybe you could potentially convince me that's true, but it just seems a very strange conclusion. We have, to broaden the conversation, but we have a Speaker of the House who said something very racist a couple of years ago about how he didn't believe there was any such thing as white supremacy or something. I forget the exact. White privilege. Didn't believe white privilege was a real thing at all. And you have people like John Breen. I'm pointing to you, obviously, but I'm who would have who's just a legacy and who clearly has no wellspring of intelligence or brilliance or competence from which he can draw. He's just a name with money and connections, and so we're about to enter an even worse time because we're about to have redistricting, and the very conservative leadership of at the State House is going to redraw the districts in a way that's going to make it even more favorable for their conservative ideology. And then too, you have you didn't talk about this. I don't need you to validate this, but it's true that all of these people questioned the legitimacy of your campaign, broke their own rules in the paper and other places to try to do everything they could to discredit you in any way possible, to cheat anyhow they could to beat you in the special election. And when you won, they said, well, he doesn't even belong here, he's not legitimate. So the idea, they talk about their legitimacy. If they win a squeaker, they say they have a mandate. But if we win an overwhelming election, they say, well, you don't belong there, you cheated somehow, and so...
So then that's a microcosm right up the country then.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens.
And that's another thing about the whole point about this resolution. It is supposed to just be we are representing one small part of our whole country. We should be able to sit down and be as the city of Woonsocket denounces white supremacy. That should be a cut and dry thing, obviously. But it's. Sorry, I just lost my.
I was going to ask, but did you feel like maybe, like you said, it wasn't going to be a unanimous thing, but it was going to kind of just move quickly, and then you were going to go on? Because the way when I read it, it sounded like you thought, well, maybe I'll get dinged a little bit, but we'll just move past this pretty quickly. And then it sounded like that kind of thing where you're like, wait, is this going to be a thing? Are we going to make, is that accurate?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was feeling about it. And I did want to go back to your point that by electoral politics, I mean that, yes, this special election was a mandate on a new set of ideas that's typically not represented in elections in Woonsocket, only recently hasn't been. And by electoral politics, I meant that next year, that can happen a bunch more times.
Yeah, I was gonna, stuff there. Yeah, you, and then we'll go right.
Just real quickly, just to piggyback off this gentleman, if we can also put this in the context of the post that I think Steve had given us the week before of the city council meeting, was
that the open spaces one?
The contretemps between the mayor and the city clerk, the racial context of that, but also the context of change, because I hear the objection to Alex's fine resolution as opposing change, breaking up that cabal that exists as much as anything else. So if someone could just share that, because I don't know that everyone knows about the previous story.
Yeah.
Steve, do you want to?
Well, that wasn't actually my story. That was
but you can go ahead.
well, no, it was.
Was that Projo?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay,
It was,
sorry.
and I don't know all the specifics, but there's a. Is she a clerk?
Yes.
The city clerk.
Yeah, city clerk, and she works there. And there was something happened and the mayor tried to put it all on her.
I did read that.
Yeah, and of course she was on the stage while this happened. I believe she's a black woman and she was there, and she was the one person of color on the entire dais at the time, at least who presented that way, which is what Kanoya was trying to get Alex to do, is to like single her out, which I thought was just an awful thing because she never says a word there. She just keeps just does the clerking, right? So
what were you gonna
yeah.
say?
And according to according to the story, the mayor has targeted this city clerk, who's probably one of the few people of color in the city in the town hall, for dismissal, and was trying to recruit an ally.
Because she was friends with her opponent, the mayor's opponent.
Right.
Which infuriates me because it was her birthday. And I can only imagine how she had to feel sitting through there in between all of you guys as she had to listen to this story. That's how she spent her birthday.
Yeah.
I am infuriated. I'm sorry that I chickened out because I really did try, but it was just too much, too soon for me. And I really wish I could have stuck around because she had to sit there and listen to that.
So you were there? You were there? You're saying? Or
yes, I was there. I was
there.
I made a statement and then I ran away because that's what I do. But there was not enough little opportunity for that meeting. That was intense, and I just feel like don't regret that that's what you did, or feel like like they made a mockery, a fool of you. Like that just shows who they are and who is actually stands for the community, is for the community, and is understanding the issues within communities, and not just your community. The community means the black community, the white community, the Italian community, the Portuguese community. It goes on and on and on. You have to understand everybody's standpoint, all issues in all communities. If you want to understand each other, you can't just stop there. So, everybody is proud of you, and you know what I mean? A lot of people will get their opinion, and even if it went wrong that time, you know what I mean? Just try again, because we'll have to vote those people out if they don't even understand what white nationalism is. Are you kidding me? You want to just ignore it?
I love that. Oh, I don't know any white nationalists personally, so they don't exist. I have no.
I like your really beautiful comedic beat where you're like, yes, of like,
Yes.
There was something that I wrote this week, because it's funny that we're doing. It's not funny, but it's very odd that we're doing this reading now. We just finished a show at Epic called Fires in the Mirror, which is it's about the Crown Heights incident in 1991. And it has to do with identity and community, and it's very interesting that this is happening right after that. And it's also interesting because we've had quite a week in this country.
Yes.
And one of the things that I thought while you were speaking was that I wrote this really expletive-filled thing because I was upset because all of my super liberal friends were like, well, why bother? Why bother? And I was like, because it'll just annoy the shit out of them, and that's a good enough reason for me. If all we do is just annoy the hell out of them and ruin their mother effing day every day until they because that I feel like they just want to wear us down.
Yeah.
And they just want us to just go home and give up. And my bar is not like to dramatically change things. For me personally, as the former class clown, my bar is just, well, I'm just going to make your life a living hell then, if nothing else. And I don't need much power to do that. I can drive you nuts from anywhere.
This morning at the Trump rally, there was about 14 of us as counter protesters, and I blew my whistle for 2 hours straight. And they just wanted me to go home, and they kept looking at me like, she's gonna have to stop at some point, but you just can't. Don't give them the.
You also saw a man holding a women for Trump sign, which I thought is fantastic.
A man was holding a woman for Trump sign.
That's what we call a feminist. Yes, what were you going to say? Yes.
So Catherine, you brought up a really good point that normally bigots, when you confront them, they kind of go, ah.
Yeah.
That's not from what I've been experiencing, on social media and the way some of these council men are acting. That's not happening in Woonsocket.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's proper for me to say it, but I'm going to say it. John Ward is an asshole, and some of the things that he's challenged me on, that he'll try, you know, the gymnastics, and if he's watching this, hi John.
Hey girl.
Yeah, so it's happening in Woonsocket, and these are people that when I lived in Woonsocket, I was like, oh, Denise Sierra's all right. She owns Burrito Company. You know, she can't be bad. You know, I'll vote for her. And now it's events like this that's really exposing them, and they don't want people to know. You can't watch city council meetings online unless you're in a Facebook group, because they want to cover up and be in their own echo chamber. So it's really important to keep that pressure on in Woonsocket, because they're not backing away. They're actually, in my opinion, empowered that, you know, these, you know, let's crush the libs from Providence and that kind of thing, that it's re-energizing them, which is really unfortunate, because if people just sat down and had a conversation, I think that it would go a long way than John Ward trying to own Alicia on Facebook by sharing, you know, the wrestling of what the ADL says about Antifa.
Yeah.
And that's happening.
No, I totally, yeah. I get into these issues with people all the time where like they want to just like own the libs, like we can just destroy them and everything. And sometimes it's like it's better to get their energy away from destroying the country, like and doing that. And much like what Jonathan was saying earlier, like this is a conversation that we really need to have, and so much more. And the fact that they just want to be like, were you at Charlottesville? Like that's the only thing that they can think of. Like that's the only moment they can think of. Like I was at the Straight Pride Parade a few weeks ago, and there were white supremacist people. There were white supremacist banners, people with swastika tattoos there. That was in Boston, but right here, like right here. And so it's here, like, and it's not going anywhere. So we have to fight it at every angle. Like, and the quote, "Silence and inaction is complicity." Like you need to speak up and you need to talk against these people, even if they want to come back and be rude and obnoxious.
And you need to use the privilege, the privilege that you have in doing so.
Yeah.
Because my doing it, or Alexis doing it, or Jomo doing it is different than you doing
yes,
it.
exactly.
Doing it,
When I was at the Straight Pride Parade and everything, I watched people get arrested, and people of color getting arrested. And it was like, I probably would be okay. And I knew that, and so I made myself go out in the front, and I made sure that people were okay, and I used that privilege. We have to use our privilege when it comes to these situations.
I like the quote, the cute little analogy. I'd love to know what a radio show host gave him that quote about, you know, when conservatives don't like what's on, they turn the channel. Because those assholes only watch Fox News, so they never have to change the channel. So how hysterical that your TV would ever be on anything you didn't like. Like, it's probably just locked in on the, like, well, we never care about diverse opinions. Well, I'm sure you don't. You never get to experience it. Yes?
I was literally calling the donors of John Young's the WNRI radio show, and literally all the donors I called who, like, didn't like what I was saying. They were like, "Oh, well, you're disruptive." This is the thing they repeat all the time. Like, "Whoa, I just turned it off. You know, there's an off button, right?" And I'm like, "That's not the point, buddy." Like,
I don't really.
I'm trying to stop you from propagating
Well, it
this.
sounds like a lot of what their dogma is coming from a professional mindfuckery, and we need to, and as you said, we need to just step up and challenge that. And yes, we do need to use our privilege, and I do it all the time over true freaking value. I've had quite a few interesting conversations over the years as a private contractor in a man's world. But anyway, yeah, you gotta use it. And I use my throne privilege also. I slow shit down at the grocery store. Oh, wait a minute, what? Let's talk about the what? What's going on? Yeah.
By the way, thank you very much, thank you. I saw Aaron's hand go up. Hey Aaron, how's it going?
Hi Aaron. Just wanted to...
It turned into an AA meeting. Hi Aaron.
First reiterate the gratitude that's been expressed so many times that already today, that we have someone who is willing to take on this fight in Woonsocket. We all see what you're up against, and how clearly there's going to be a lot of lonely moments where you're the target of that, and so it's not easy to take that on. So I think it's clear we're all behind you. I think it's important for us all to recognize that Alex's election this year showed that most of these people up here are paper tigers. Like, they can be beaten. The machine hasn't been challenged before, and when it is challenged by smart people who are willing to do the work and stand up for the things that the community actually needs, they can be beaten. And so, like, there's a plan. We don't have to deal with this going forward. And whether you live in Woonsocket or not, I think it's in all of our interests when another conservative machine in Rhode Island is broken. So I would just say that we're all here supporting this now, and let's make sure we keep it up. And when the folks who are doing this organizing in Woonsocket make a call for volunteers, when they make a call for donations for the people that can change what's up here, let's make sure that we are all there at that point as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and I want to ask Alex to just. Yeah, so what would be useful to you, and everything Aaron said obviously, but what else would be useful to put out there for people to know going forward?
Yes, I mean, if I can make a shameless plug, if everybody likes my Facebook page, Alex Kithes, Woonsocket City Council.
Yes, you can turn your cell phones on and do that now.
Yeah. Just because you'll be kept up to date on everything that's going on. I have a Twitter and an Instagram as well, if you search the same phrase. But I mean, what we're doing going forward is really the deep community activation. That's the work that, you know, I'm pointing at a couple of my friends that are helping with it, and you know that we're really making it understood that the desire of the vast majority of the people in the community is for the government to better reflect us. And so and this work is being done in many different flavors, like I mentioned before, community organizing for events, but also, you know, organizing for single issues in the municipal government, and working towards the 2020 elections. All of these things, and activating the community and really bringing us all together, where the vast majority of people in the community oppose the things that were said up here. And they're on our side. They're on the right side of history. And so simply finding ways to organize us and bringing us together, that's basically what I'm doing over the next year and a half leading up to September and then November of 2020. And then, you know, and moving forward, I mean, that really is that deep community organizing that will help to fix our city government.
And if I can piggyback off Alex's statement, I'm Keith, and I was this campaign manager for this. To provide some context here, you know, talk about, you know, how hard the work is, and we were up against in this election, or, you know, Alex's name right on the ballot was up against an opponent who had been a 16-year member of the city council for different periods of his time. First elected, I believe, in the 1980s, served a few terms then, and then was reelected in the 2000s, and served a few terms then. Had been a mayoral candidate, and had been a city council president at different points. Very well known, not a single voter did not know who this person was. Not that many voters knew who Alex was at the start of this election, and the ones who did had some interesting conceptions of his activist history. So that was where we started at the start of the special election. This was a 3.5-month project, and in the end, you know, Alex won. You know, it was close. It was hard. It was lots of work, lots of anxiety-inducing hours, and there were many times when it seemed that the whole project was, not going anywhere. It was fruitless, or it was not going to happen. It was going to fail, collapse, and we would all be proven to be wrong, just like they said. And in the end, we proved that it is possible, even in Woonsocket, to achieve something. And I think that it shows that we have so much that we can build on. We know what it takes just to get this far. And now that we know how to do that, we know how to win another seat, and another seat, and to win a state senate seat, and win a governor's race. And when you do all that cumulatively, and it's not just individual seats here and there, but it's part of a bigger, broader movement, that is when you begin to see it's not 7 people sitting up there who do not reflect the community. It's 7 people sitting up there who are proud to pass things that are representative of the community, and that's the future that we can work for. So even though it is hard, it's not easy. It's not easy, but if every single person here could put in a little bit of time, in whether it's in their district or coming up to Woonsocket, if you're really that excited about it, then it certainly is possible. And I think if all of you guys know that in your hearts, then there's nothing that we can't do.
And to piggyback on that, the thing that so we had throughout the campaign these feelings of like we were fighting a losing battle and all of that, and we ultimately won, but it was 52-48 or something like that. And the thing that in Woonsocket that it proved, and that it would prove a similar situation would prove in other communities like Woonsocket, is that the dominant political culture being driven by far right-wing talk radio, like WNRI, is not actually reflective of the community, even though they're the loudest voices. And this is true of somebody like John DePietro, who you all know probably. And there's talk.
Oh God, is he still on the air?
Yeah, he is on WNRI, right? There's this type of paradigm. Granted, probably not to the same extent as in Woonsocket, but there's this type of paradigm in other places. It seems like this is the model of like these post-industrial mill cities kind of thing. Johnson, I'm not really sure, but so like when you actually understand that in the special election that we ran, where I think something like 7% of eligible voters voted, and it was probably the most conservatively stacked election in the city's history. Because in the middle of the summer, a municipal election for a single seat, like right in the proximity of 2 major holidays, the primary and the general, and yet we still won on the progressive platform. So what that tells you is that the existing power structure that WNRI represents, like this talk radio, that the people up here, the base that they were trying to sort of flag to with the things that they were saying, doesn't exist. Or it's not nearly as dominant as what is believed.
Well, I just want to grab it because he's been waiting in that. Yes, sorry, go ahead. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, you talked about annoying people in power. I think it's a fine concept, but I don't think that the 5 people felt annoyed at all. I mean, they probably violated the law by stripping out all of the text of your resolution and replacing it with something completely contradictory, because you actually can't do that. But the law won't hold them accountable. We pretty much all know that. Anyone who expects otherwise would be, I think, would be adorable. But the point is, like, I don't think that they felt annoyed at all. I think they felt vindicated because they got applause from the two. Yeah, the two.
No, but what I can say to you is what I'll say to you is, and you can't get inside their head. In that moment, they may not have been, but we've done over the years we've done stuff like this. This annoys the hell out of them. It absolutely does, and they absolutely don't ever want you to think that you've gotten under their skin, because that's their tactic. That's what they want to do. And actually, when I said, Alex, we really want to make sure we pronounce your last name correctly. I don't particularly care if we pronounce their last name correctly, because it's that kind of thing that it's the littlest things of just, So, and all I was trying to say, as someone who's been sued by a former Oscar nominee, who assured me that he was not annoyed, just in the cease and desist letter, he made it very clear that he was not annoyed by me. But I think what I was talking about was a lot of what I'm seeing this week, which is like, well, is world change the end goal? And it's like, sure. In the meantime, though, why don't we just piss them the hell off? Why don't we just, and that's why I messaged Lauren, and that's why I said, let's do something like this, because if nothing else, it's snarky, and it's sassy. Hopefully, it's a little gay, and it's something that we can do. And I can tell you from some of the messages I've gotten in our theater's inbox that some of their supporters are not very thrilled, and that's more than enough for me. If that's all I did, if I pissed off one of the people that they did, that's great.
It does and it does one of two things. It's a way that we can present this work as like this, what was said as a piece of work, and be people like, this actually did happen, but it's also just like, look how idiotic these people are. Yeah. And like when we are the louder voice, we win. much like Alex said, like when we are louder, when we refuse to back down, and when we continue to be progressive voices and change, we win every time.
Piggyback off of that, I just want to make
Oh, yes.
and then I have to
Yes,
leave
yes.
for Shoshana.
Yeah, yes.
All of the conversation about changing the composition of the city council and other kinds of, and other offices, and having the political representatives actually represent the nature of the city, and is what is happening at large in the country. So this is indeed a microcosm, and it is critically important not only to address the current voters, but to talk to children. White supremacists are recruiting online, and it's important to create a future generation of savvy voters, to use theater in the community for children. Kids often say that civics is the most boring class that they've taken. Why?
Yeah,
you know, it's really about theater and about ideas and about how people can introduce their own sense of value into the future of their own communities. So thinking ahead in terms of how to mobilize not only your allies to run with you in city council, but the children of the community, the voters in 2020, because we know that with the redistricting that's happened, that's ongoing, the gerrymandering, the only way to really win is with large numbers, right? So how do you do that? And children is really the key, transforming the future. Thank you.
I'm really glad.
So much.
I just want to say, so we do, we can all hang out if you want, and I know Alex will hang out a little bit. We're going to start kind of moving the room into that other thing we do, which is theater. But we hope, but if you want us to hang out, we'll hang out and talk. Lauren and I will hang out and talk. Alex, I hope you'll hang out and talk. But we're going to start, like I said, kind of moving the room back over. But I wanted to, before any more of you leave, I wanted to thank you all so much for coming. We're glad you're here. Come check us out at Epic again. Start going to your town council meetings. And thank you for coming.